Crix had not blinked in approximately 47 seconds, which was impressive considering he had 6 eyes. All 6 of them were currently locked onto the human standing in his office, and all 6 of them were filled with the kind of existential dread usually reserved for tax audits and surprise health inspections. "So," Crix said, his voice climbing half an octave with each word, "let me be absolutely, crystal, unambiguously clear about this. The Deathworld exhibit is not, under any circumstances, to be entered. Not for cleaning, not for feeding, not for observation, not if you drop your communicator in there, not if someone offers you 1,000,000 credits, not if the Emperor himself commands it." Jamie Keller, newly hired fauna compatibility specialist, which was apparently what the Galactic Union called someone who scooped alien poop for a living, nodded enthusiastically. Their eyes, however, were not on Crix. They were focused on something past his left shoulder, out the window, toward the distant enclosures. "Are you listening to me?" Crix's antennae quivered. "Human Jamie, this is not a joke. Do you understand the liability insurance premiums on Deathworld creatures? Do you have any comprehension of what a Vorgoth can do to organic matter?" "Totally," Jamie said, still not making eye contact. "No touching the spicy animals. Got it." "Spicy?" Crix felt a migraine forming behind eyes 3 and 4. "They are not spicy. They are lethally toxic, hyper-aggressive apex predators from planets where the food chain is less of a chain and more of a circular firing squad. We have maintained 0 incidents for 847 cycles. 847. That is my legacy, human. That is what keeps me from dissolving into a puddle of stress hormones every night." "That's really impressive," Jamie said, and Crix felt a brief moment of hope that maybe, just maybe, this human understood the gravity of the situation. Then Jamie asked, "What's that big, fuzzy one over there?" While pointing out the window. Crix did not need to turn around. He knew exactly which enclosure was visible from his office window. He had specifically requested this office so he could monitor it at all times. "That," Crix said slowly, "is the Vorgoth habitat. And if you are referring to the creature as fuzzy, then you are not looking at its fur. You are looking at its sensory spines, which can detect prey from 3 kilometers away and are coated in a neurotoxin that causes full body paralysis followed by liquefaction of internal organs." "Huh," Jamie said. "Looks lonely, though." And that was when Crix made his first mistake. He blinked, all 6 eyes, simultaneously, just for a fraction of a second. When he opened them again, Jamie was gone. Crix's immediate response was to activate every single panic button in his office simultaneously, which in retrospect was overkill. But in his defense, he was having what medical professionals would later describe as a significant cardiovascular event. "Security," he shrieked into his communicator. "Security, we have a code Crimson. Repeat, code Crimson. Human in the Deathworld exhibit!" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, then a deep, weary sigh that sounded like it had been fermenting for approximately 1,000 years. "Crix," said Cleet, the security chief, "the human has been here for 6 minutes." 6 minutes? Crix's voice could have shattered crystal. 6 minutes, and you did not think to mention that a soft-skinned biped with no natural defenses has wandered into an enclosure containing 15 species that are banned as bioweapons in 70% of known space? "Well," Cleet said, and Crix could practically hear him scratching his 4th arm thoughtfully, "I figured you knew. You hired them." Crix did not remember crossing his office. He did not remember sprinting down 3 corridors and shouldering past a tour group of shocked Florbian tourists. He only became aware of his surroundings when he slammed face first into the reinforced observation window of the Vorgoth habitat, all 6 eyes pressed against the transparent aluminum. What he saw there would haunt him for the rest of his considerably shortened life. Jamie Keller, the human, the soft, delicate creature from the recently discovered backwater planet called Earth, was sitting cross-legged on the ground. The Vorgoth, all 900 kilograms of armored nightmare, was lying down with its massive head in Jamie's lap, and Jamie was scratching behind its auditory receptors like it was some kind of domesticated companion animal. "No," Crix whispered. "No, no, 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 no." The Vorgoth made a sound. It was a sound Crix had never heard before in 15 years of managing this exhibit. It was almost like a purr, if a purr could also strip paint off walls. "Oh, that is deeply upsetting," said a voice next to him. Crix turned to find Cleet standing there, all 4 arms crossed, his reptilian features arranged in an expression of profound resignation. Cleet was a Draxon, which meant he stood nearly 3 meters tall, had skin like tank armor, and had personally survived 2 wars and a pyramid scheme. Nothing fazed Cleet. Cleet looked phased. "How long?" Crix demanded. The human has been petting it for about 4 minutes now, Cleet said. Before that, they spent 2 minutes making what I believe are called cooing noises. And you did not tranquilize the Vorgoth? Which one? Crix did not have time to process that response, because at that moment, Jamie picked up a piece of debris, a support beam that had fallen during last month's meteor shower, and hurled it across the enclosure. The Vorgoth exploded into motion, covering 30 meters in 2 seconds, and caught the beam in its jaws. Then it trotted back to Jamie, sat down, and dropped the beam at their feet, its tail wagging. Its enormous, spiked, venomous tail, wagging. Is that thing, Crix said faintly, playing fetch? Yes, Cleet said. With a structural support beam? Yes. That is being dissolved by its saliva as we speak? Yes. Crix made a sound that did not have a direct translation in any known language, but roughly meant I am reassessing every decision I have ever made. That was when the Shriekwing landed. 3 meters of leathery wings, serrated beak, and claws that could punch through starship hulls. It perched on Jamie's shoulder like some kind of demented parrot and nuzzled against their neck. Jamie laughed. Actually laughed, like this was delightful. I am going to file so much paperwork about this, Crix said. I will start the betting pool, Cleet replied, pulling out his data pad. 5 credits says the human survives the next 10 minutes. Any takers? The rescue team arrived in full tactical gear approximately 90 seconds later, which was 45 seconds faster than their previous record, set during the Great Slorbian Escape of Cycle 3847. They looked like they were preparing to storm a fortified military installation, which, to be fair, was not far off from what the Deathworld exhibit essentially was. Status report, barked Commander Threen, the team leader, whose species had evolved on a moon with 3 times standard gravity, and took professional paranoia very seriously. Crix gestured helplessly at the observation window, beyond words. Threen looked, then looked again, then turned to Crix with an expression that suggested he was reconsidering his entire career path. Is that human? Threen said slowly, using a Ravager spine as a back-scratcher. Inside the enclosure, Jamie had indeed acquired what appeared to be a shed spine from one of the other exhibits, and was now scratching the Vorgoth's back with it. The Vorgoth had rolled over onto its side, exposing its vulnerable underbelly, which was supposedly an act of submission these creatures were neurologically incapable of performing. Okay. Jamie's voice came through the observation windows. Audio feed. Who is a good apex predator? Who is the goodest nightmare made flesh? You are. Yes, you are. 3 more creatures had joined the gathering. A spike crawler, which looked like someone had given a porcupine anger management issues and a grudge against the universe. A void cat, which was not actually from the void but had been named that because looking at it too long made you question your place in the cosmos, and something that did not have an official name because the xenobiologist who discovered it had taken one look at it and immediately retired. They were all just sitting there, watching Jamie, like students waiting for a teacher to start class. This is not happening, Crix said. This is a stress-induced hallucination. I am actually unconscious in my office right now. Cleet, please confirm that I am hallucinating. You are not hallucinating, Cleet said, now openly taking bets from the assembled rescue team. 15 credits says the human tries to teach the Vorgoth to sit on command. 20 says they succeed, added one of the rescue team members. I hate all of you, Crix said. Jamie, apparently oblivious to the small army gathering outside the enclosure, had stood up and was now examining the habitat with a critical eye. The Vorgoth followed close behind, its previous aura of lethal menace replaced with something that could only be described as hopeful puppy energy. If puppies weighed nearly a ton and excreted acid. You know what your problem is? Jamie said, apparently addressing the creatures directly. You are all bored out of your minds. No enrichment activities, no stimulation. Just sitting in here looking scary 24/7. That is not healthy for anyone. I do not care what planet you are from. Enrichment activities? Crix repeated faintly. It is a containment unit for apocalyptic fauna, not a recreational facility. But Jamie was on a roll now, pacing back and forth while the assembled nightmare creatures tracked movement with obvious interest. Back on Earth, we figured this out centuries ago. You cannot just stick an intelligent creature in a box and expect it to be okay. They need engagement. Mental stimulation, social interaction. The Shriekwing, still perched on Jamie's shoulder, made a sound like a rusty gate being dragged across sheet metal. Jamie patted its head. Exactly. See, this one gets it. I am going to need so much therapy after this, Crix said. Jamie had picked up a small boulder now and was showing it to the Vorgoth, holding it up like a prize. You want this? You want the rock? Go get it. They hurled the boulder across the enclosure. The Vorgoth bounded after it with enthusiasm that would have been adorable if it was not, again, a 900-kilogram murder machine. It brought the boulder back, dropped it at Jamie's feet. Sat down. "Good," Jamie said. "Very good. Now stay." The Vorgoth stayed. Crix felt his primary heart skip several beats. Through the communication channel, he could hear the rescue team making increasingly frantic notes. Commander Threen was muttering something about updating the threat assessment protocols for humans. "Okay," Jamie said, addressing the Vorgoth while gesturing broadly. "This is going to sound weird, but hear me out. I grew up on a Deathworld too, Earth. We have got creatures there that would fit right in here. I had 3 dogs growing up, pack hunters, descended from wolves, teeth like knives, could track prey for miles. Know what we did with them? Taught them tricks, played fetch, let them sleep on the furniture." The Vorgoth tilted its head, processing this information with what might have been curiosity. "And cats," Jamie continued. "Oh man, cats. Apex predators, perfect hunters, reflexes so fast they can snatch birds out of the air, retractable claws, night vision. We literally invited them into our homes and called them Mr. Whiskers." "What?" said Cleet. "Is a Mr. Whiskers? And horses?" Jamie was saying, "I had a horse named Thunder, beautiful animal. Also could cave your skull in with one kick, bite hard enough to break bones, and outrun most predators. We put saddles on them and went for rides." There was a long silence in the observation room. "Their entire planet is a death world," Cleet said finally. "Is that what I am understanding here? The humans are from a death world and they just decided to domesticate everything else on it?" "Apparently," Crix said, feeling several of his firmly held beliefs about the nature of the universe crumbling like a stale cookie. Inside the enclosure, Jamie had somehow convinced the Shriekwing to fly in a circle. When it completed the loop, Jamie produced what appeared to be a ration bar from their pocket and tossed it up. The Shriekwing caught it with precision that suggested this was not its first rodeo, which was another Earth expression Crix was going to have to look up later. 10 credits says they have the whole exhibit doing synchronized routines by end of shift, someone in the rescue team said. "No bet," replied Commander Threen, lowering his stun rifle. "I am not taking that action. I have seen enough impossible things today." Crix pressed his face against the observation window, all 6 eyes wide with a mixture of horror and reluctant fascination. His perfect safety record, his 847 cycles of 0 incidents. His entire professional identity was built on the principle that Deathworld creatures were to be observed from a safe distance and never ever engaged with directly. And here was this human, this impossibly fragile creature from a planet that had apparently tried very hard to kill its own inhabitants and failed, turning his most dangerous exhibit into something that looked distressingly like a petting zoo. "Cleet," Crix said. "Yes, Director? I am going to need you to update the insurance policy." "Already on it," Cleet said, tapping away at his data pad. "Also filing the paperwork for Jamie's promotion." "Promotion?" Crix's voice climbed another octave. "They have been here for less than an hour and nearly gave me a fatal cardiac episode." "Yes," Cleet said calmly, "but look at the visitor viewing numbers." He turned his data pad around. The digital counter was climbing so fast it was basically a blur. Apparently, watching a human casually handle creatures that had been used as nightmare fuel in children's stories across 12 star systems was peak entertainment. Crix stared at the numbers, then at Jamie, who was now apparently teaching the Vorgoth to roll over, then back at the numbers. "I need a drink," he said. "I need several drinks," agreed Commander Threen. "I need to collect my winnings," said Cleet, grinning with entirely too many teeth. It took Crix another 20 minutes to work up the courage to actually enter the Deathworld exhibit. He did so wearing full protective gear, accompanied by half the rescue team, and with his last will and testament freshly updated on his personal datapad. Jamie looked up as the airlock cycled open, still sitting on the ground with the Vorgoth's head in their lap, and approximately 6 other lethal creatures arranged around them in what could only be described as a cuddle puddle of doom. "Oh hey, boss," Jamie said cheerfully. "I was just explaining to everyone here about proper enrichment protocols. Did you know that most behavioral issues in captive animals stem from inadequate mental stimulation and lack of agency in their environment?" Crix opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No sound came out except a faint wheeze. "The human has a point," Cleet said from behind him. "I took a xenozoology course once. Failed it, but I remember that part." "You," Crix managed finally, pointing a trembling appendage at Jamie, "are sitting in the middle of 15 creatures that could end your biological functions in 15 different horrifying ways, and you are lecturing me about enrichment. Protocols? Well, yeah, Jamie said, like this was obvious. Look at them. They are not aggressive. They are understimulated. Big difference. As if to demonstrate, Jamie scratched the Vorgoth behind its auditory ridge. The creature made that paint-stripping purr sound again and rolled over, exposing its underbelly. One massive paw came up and batted playfully at Jamie's hand. See? Jamie said. Totally harmless. Its saliva can dissolve titanium, Crix shrieked. Sure, but it is not doing that right now, is it? Jamie countered. Because it is not stressed or threatened. It is just a big sweetie who needed some attention. Weren't you? Yes, you were. The Vorgoth's tail wagged again, slamming into the ground with enough force to crack the reinforced flooring. Crix felt his worldview, carefully constructed over decades of rigorous academic study and professional experience, shattering like dropped glassware. This is not possible. Vorgoth are solitary ambush predators with aggression levels that spike at the mere presence of other organisms. They are neurologically incapable of social bonding. Maybe in the wild, Jamie said, but in captivity, with no outlet for their natural behaviors? Yeah, they get cranky. Wouldn't you? Jamie stood up, gently moving the Vorgoth's head aside. The creature watched them go with what could only be described as disappointment. Watch this. Jamie walked over to the spike crawler, which had been classified as a level 9 biohazard and was legally required to be kept in isolation. They held out their hand. No, Crix lunged forward, but Cleet caught him with 2 arms. Just watch, Cleet said. The spike crawler sniffed Jamie's hand, then gently, impossibly gently, bumped its head against their palm. Jamie scratched under its chin. The creature's thousands of venomous spines flattened against its body in an apparent expression of contentment. Good baby, Jamie cooed. Such a good baby. I am having a medical emergency, Crix said. Someone call the medical emergency. You want to see something really cool? Jamie asked, and did not wait for an answer. They put 2 fingers in their mouth and whistled, a sharp piercing sound that made everyone except Jamie flinch. The Vorgoth stood up, walked over to a specific spot in the enclosure, sat down. Jamie whistled again, a different pattern. The Shriekwing took off, flew in a figure 8, and landed on a perch that had definitely not been there this morning. A third whistle. The spike crawler rolled onto its back. You taught them tricks, Crix said faintly. In less than an hour, you taught Deathworld apex predators to perform tricks on command. They are really smart, Jamie said enthusiastically. Way smarter than you have been giving them credit for. The Vorgoth figured out sit-in like 5 minutes. The Shriekwing already knew how to fetch. It just needed someone to throw things for it. And this little guy, Jamie patted the spike crawler, has been absolutely starved for physical contact. Haven't you, precious? The spike crawler made a sound like grinding metal mixed with wind chimes. It sounded almost happy. This is wrong, Crix said, but his protest lacked conviction. This violates every protocol, every safety regulation, every principle of xenozoological management. Does it violate the principle of not making animals miserable for no reason? Jamie asked, and there was an edge to their voice now, the first sign of actual seriousness Crix had heard from them. Because that is what you have been doing. These creatures are not monsters. They are just animals from harsh environments who adapted to survive. You stuck them in boxes and forgot they were living things. Crix had no response to that. Mostly because Jamie was right, and he knew it, and that knowledge tasted like shame and expired nutrient paste. Back on Earth, Jamie continued, their voice softening again. We have got dogs. I mentioned them before. Descended from wolves. Wolves are pack hunters. Efficient killers. Teeth designed to tear through flesh and crush bone. Bite force that can break a deer's spine. And somewhere along the line, some crazy humans looked at these predators and said, you know what? I bet we could be friends. The Vorgoth had wandered back over and was leaning against Jamie's side, nearly knocking them over with its bulk. And we were right, Jamie said, scratching the Vorgoth absently, because we understood something important. Aggression and danger are not the same as evil or malice. These animals are not trying to hurt anyone. They are just trying to exist, and when you give them what they actually need, space and stimulation and yes, even affection, they are fine. Better than fine. Your species is insane, Crix said, but there was wonder in his voice now instead of horror. Oh, absolutely, Jamie agreed cheerfully. We domesticated wolves, and cats who are obligate carnivores and basically tiny murder machines, and horses which are prey animals that can kill you if you spook them wrong, and we kept them in our homes. We bred pigeons for fun. We made friends with corvids, which are smart enough to hold grudges across generations. One guy in Australia tried to domesticate cassowaries. What is a cassowary? Cleet asked. Imagine a bird that stands 2 meters tall, has a knife on its head, and has killed multiple humans, Jamie said. Now imagine someone looking at that and thinking, I want 5 of those in my backyard. Did it work? Cleet asked. No, he died, Jamie said. But the point is, we tried. Because humans do not see danger and think, stay away from that. We think, I wonder if I can pet it. Crix looked around the Deathworld exhibit, at the creatures that were now calm, engaged, and apparently content. At the viewing numbers that were still climbing on Cleet's datapad. At Jamie, who was casually leaning against a creature that had a bite force measured in tons per square centimeter. Fine, Crix said, and the word hurt coming out. Fine. You can implement your enrichment program, but you are writing all the documentation, and if anything goes wrong, I am blaming you. Nothing is going to go wrong, Jamie said confidently, a statement that would prove to be both technically true and wildly misleading. Also, you are promoted, Crix added. Senior Fauna Compatibility Specialist, effective immediately. Does that come with a raise? If you keep the creatures from eating the visitors, yes. Deal, Jamie said, and shook Crix's appendage with a grip that was surprisingly firm for such a small creature. As they left the enclosure, Crix heard Cleet collecting his winnings from the rescue team, who were grumbling about never betting against humans again. Crix decided he was going to need that drink after all, possibly several, possibly an entire barrel. The next 3 days were, in Crix's professional opinion, a sustained exercise in controlled chaos that somehow never quite tipped over into actual disaster. Jamie had wasted no time implementing what they called the Comprehensive Enrichment Initiative, which was apparently human speak for turning the Deathworld exhibit into something that looked less like a maximum security prison and more like, and Crix shuddered at the phrase, a fun activity center. The Vorgoth now had a collection of indestructible toys. Well, mostly indestructible. They went through about 3 synthetic rubber spheres per day, but the creature was noticeably calmer and had stopped trying to dissolve the observation windows out of apparent boredom. The Shriekwing had an elaborate climbing structure that Jamie had designed and Cleet's security team had reluctantly constructed, all of them wearing full tactical gear and looking deeply uncomfortable the entire time. The creature spent hours navigating the structure, occasionally dive-bombing Jamie for treats, which should have been terrifying but somehow just looked like an extremely dangerous game of catch. The spike crawler had a dig pit. A dig pit. In a maximum security xenozoological facility. Jamie had justified this by pointing out that the species was naturally fossorial and denying it the ability to burrow was, quote, basically psychological torture, end quote. The creature had immediately burrowed into the pit and emerged looking, as much as a nightmarish ball of living weapons could look, absolutely delighted. But the real change was not in the enclosures. It was in the creatures themselves. Crix stood at the observation window, watching through his multiple eyes as Jamie moved through the exhibit with the casual confidence of someone walking through a park. The creatures followed, not with predatory interest, but with something that looked disturbingly like affection. The Vorgoth trotted alongside Jamie like an oversized dog. The Shriekwing rode on their shoulder. Even the creature with no name had emerged from its usual hiding spot and was observing from a nearby perch. Visitor satisfaction is up 400%, Cleet said, appearing next to Crix with his usual unnerving silence. Revenue has increased proportionally. The Galactic Tourism Board sent a commendation this morning. I am thrilled, Crix said flatly. Tell me, Cleet, do you ever have nightmares about the statistical improbability of what we are witnessing? Every night, Cleet said, but I sleep better knowing the human is on our side. Inside the exhibit, Jamie had set up what appeared to be an obstacle course. They were currently guiding the Vorgoth through it, using a combination of hand signals and verbal commands. The creature moved with surprising grace for something that weighed as much as a small spacecraft, navigating around barriers, through tunnels, and over platforms. A crowd had gathered at the observation windows. Crix recognized species from at least 30 different systems, all watching with expressions ranging from amazement to existential horror. Several were recording on their personal devices. One Florbian had apparently fainted and was being attended to by medical staff. Is the human making it jump through hoops? Asked a Centaurian tourist next to Crix, their voice filled with awe. Technically, those are reinforced transit rings from decommissioned cargo haulers, Crix said. But yes, essentially, hoops. The Vorgoth cleared the final ring, landed with a ground-shaking thud, and immediately looked to Jamie for approval. Jamie produced a treat from their pocket, some kind of protein supplement mixed with what Jamie had called enrichment nutrients, which as far as Crix could tell was just regular nutrients with a fancy name. The Vorgoth accepted the treat with surprising gentleness, and then did something that made Crix's primary heart skip another beat. It wagged its tail. Not the aggressive thrashing that usually preceded an attack. Not the warning sweep that meant back away slowly. An actual, genuine, happy tail wag. "I am never going to emotionally recover from this," Crix said. "Neither is our insurance provider," Cleet added. "They have been calling every hour asking for updates. I think they are trying to figure out if they can drop us as clients." "Can they?" "Legally, yes. Practically, no. We are the only facility in the sector with Deathworld specimens. They need us more than we need them." Cleet paused. The human asked for a budget increase, by the way. "For what?" "More toys. Training equipment. Something called a ball pit, which I looked up and appears to be a container filled with colored spheres. For the spike crawler." Crix turned all 6 eyes on Cleet. "A ball pit. The human says it will provide sensory stimulation and encourage natural foraging behaviors. The spike crawler hunts by ambushing prey and impaling them on venomous spines." "Yes," Cleet agreed. "But apparently even apex predators enjoy recreational activities." "Who knew?" "Humans knew," Crix said. "Humans knew because their entire evolutionary history is a story of befriending things that should have eaten them and somehow making it work." Inside the exhibit, Jamie had moved on to working with the Shriekwing, teaching it what appeared to be a complex aerial maneuver. The creature executed a barrel roll that would have made a fighter pilot jealous, then landed perfectly on Jamie's outstretched arm. The crowd at the observation window applauded. They were applauding a creature that had been used as a biological weapon in 2 separate interstellar conflicts. "You know what the worst part is?" Crix said. "It is working. The creatures are healthier. Behavioral stress indicators are down across the board. They are eating better, sleeping better, showing increased social engagement. By every measurable metric, Jamie was right and I was wrong." "That must be difficult for you," Cleet said, not unkindly. "It is devastating," Crix admitted. "I have built my entire career on the principle of minimal intervention and maximum security. And this human shows up and proves that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is nothing at all." They watched in silence as Jamie completed the day's training session. The creatures returned to their designated rest areas, but unlike before, they did not retreat into defensive postures or aggressive displays. They just settled down, content and calm. Jamie approached the exit airlock, covered in dust and what Crix hoped was just mud. They gave a cheerful wave to the observation window, apparently not noticing or not caring that half the visitors were staring at them like they were some kind of mythical being. "Cleet," Crix said. "Yes, Director? Approve the budget increase. All of it. And order more protective gear for the staff. If we are doing this, we are doing it properly." "And the insurance company?" "Tell them to adjust or find another client. We are keeping the human." Cleet's grin was positively predatory. "Yes, Director. Should I also start preparing the paperwork for the expansion Jamie proposed?" Crix felt a headache forming behind eyes 2 and 5. "What expansion?" "The human wants to extend the enrichment program to the other exhibits, starting with the Margesh swarm colony." "The Margesh?" Crix's voice climbed toward frequencies usually reserved for emergency alerts. "The insectoid hive mind that communicates through pheromones and has a collective intelligence that rivals most planetary defense networks." "That is the one," Cleet confirmed. "Jamie thinks they might enjoy puzzle feeders and group activities." Crix looked at the ceiling, as if the universe might offer some explanation for why this was his life now. The universe, as usual, remained silent. "Fine," he said, "but I am taking a vacation after this. Somewhere quiet, somewhere with no Deathworld creatures. Somewhere where the most dangerous thing is a mild sunburn." "Good luck finding that," Cleet said. "The human mentioned that Earth has deserts where the daytime temperature can cook you alive, and oceans with enough salt to preserve a corpse indefinitely. And they vacation there. For fun." Crix made a sound like a slowly deflating balloon. "I hate this timeline." "But the visitor numbers," Cleet said, gesturing to his datapad where the statistics continued their relentless climb. "But the visitor numbers," Crix agreed miserably. 1 week later, Crix stood in his office reviewing incident reports, which had become his new favorite activity because for the first time in his career, the reports were actually boring. No escape attempts, no aggressive displays, no emergency protocols activated. Just page after page of normal, routine, blissfully uneventful operations. It was glorious. He was 3 pages into a particularly mundane maintenance log when his communicator chirped. It was reception. Director Crix, said Pella, the receptionist, who was a Glimmerian and therefore incapable of lying due to some quirk of their species' biology. We have a new human employee arriving for orientation, a transfer from the Earth Cultural Exchange Program. Crix felt something cold settle in his lower digestive tract. Another human? Yes, Director. They just arrived at the main entrance. Should I send them up? Crix looked at his desk, at his neatly organized reports, at his half-finished beverage that had finally stopped shaking every time he tried to drink it, at the small measure of peace he had managed to carve out of the chaos that was his life now. Yes, he said, because the universe had a sense of humor, and Crix was apparently the punchline. Send them up. The new human arrived exactly 4 minutes later. Their name was Riley Park, according to the personnel file that Crix had pulled up on his terminal. Background in xenobotany with a minor in animal behavior. Glowing recommendations from 3 different Earth institutions. Profile picture showing a human with a friendly smile, and what Crix had learned to recognize as that distinctive gleam in the eyes that meant trouble. Director Crix, Riley said, extending their hand in the human greeting gesture that Crix had reluctantly learned meant, shake this appendage or cause offense. It is an honor to be here. I have heard amazing things about your facility. Have you? Crix said, shaking the offered hand with one of his secondary manipulator arms, while keeping his primary eyes on Riley and his secondary eyes on the exit. What exactly have you heard? Oh, you know, the standard stuff, Riley said, their enthusiasm practically radiating off them in waves. State-of-the-art facilities, diverse species collection. And of course, the Deathworld exhibit. That is the main reason I requested the transfer, actually. Of course it was. Of course. Crix felt his carefully reconstructed sense of stability beginning to crack like thin ice. I see, he said, pulling up the orientation materials on his display. Well then, let me begin with the safety protocols. First and most importantly, the Deathworld exhibit is a restricted area. Access requires Level 3 clearance, full protective equipment, and approval from myself or the senior staff. Under no circumstances are you to enter the exhibit without proper authorization and supervision. Is that clear? Crystal clear, Riley said, nodding enthusiastically. But Crix noticed their eyes had drifted toward the window behind his desk, toward the distant view of the Deathworld exhibit. Crix pressed on, his voice taking on the practiced tone of someone who had given this speech before and knew it would not make a difference but had to try anyway. The creatures in that exhibit are classified as extreme hazard xenofauna. They are apex predators from high-gravity, high-competition ecosystems. They possess natural weaponry ranging from neurotoxins to plasma generation. Several of them are banned as military assets in 73 systems. Wow, Riley said. That is so cool. It is not cool, Crix said, his voice climbing. It is dangerous, lethal. These are not domesticated animals. They are barely contained forces of nature with teeth and claws, and the instinctual drive to kill anything they perceive as prey or threat. Right, Riley said, still nodding. Question though. Yes? Is that where you keep the cute ones? Crix felt all 6 of his eyes twitch simultaneously. It was the exact same question, the exact same tone, the exact same look of innocent curiosity masking what was clearly going to be another sustained assault on his cardiovascular health. Define cute, Crix said weakly. You know, the fluffy ones. The ones with the big eyes. The ones that look like they might enjoy belly rubs. Riley was leaning forward now, their human face arranged in an expression of genuine excitement. I saw the viral videos from last week. The Vorgoth doing tricks? That was incredible. And the Shriekwing performing aerial stunts? I have. I've been studying Deathworld fauna for 3 years and I never imagined they could be so trainable. They are not pets, Crix said, but he could hear the defeat in his own voice. Of course not, Riley agreed. They are highly intelligent apex predators deserving of respect and proper enrichment. But also, I mean, look at them. Riley had pulled up a video on their personal device, showing Jamie playing fetch with the Vorgoth. That is basically a giant puppy with acid spit. How is anyone supposed to resist that? Crix put his face in his primary hands. All 4 of them. You are going to enter the Deathworld exhibit within the first hour of your employment here, are you not? What? Riley said, and had the audacity to sound offended. No, I would never violate safety protocols like that. I have way too much respect for proper procedures and institutional authority. But if I happen to be conducting a routine perimeter inspection of the exterior fencing, and one of the creatures seemed distressed or in need of immediate enrichment intervention, I would obviously need to respond appropriately as a trained xenofauna specialist. There it is, Crix said. There is the loophole. Cleat! The security chief materialized in the doorway with his characteristic unnerving timing. Yes, Director? How long? Until the human enters the Deathworld exhibit? Cleet pulled out his datapad, already displaying what appeared to be a betting interface. Current odds say 47 minutes. I am personally betting on 35. You are supposed to prevent this, Crick said. I am supposed to maintain security, Cleet corrected. The humans are not a security threat. They are more like a force of nature. You do not prevent a force of nature. You just document it and hope your insurance covers acts of chaos. Riley was looking between them with confusion. Is there something I should know about? Yes, Crick said. Your species is insane. Clinically, diagnostically, certifiably insane. You come from a planet that spent millions of years trying to kill you, and instead of developing a healthy sense of fear, you developed an irresistible compulsion to befriend everything with teeth. Well, Riley said slowly, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. It is bad. But consider, Riley continued, warming to the topic, that our evolutionary strategy was actually incredibly successful. We are a social species that learned to form cooperative bonds with other species. That is rare in the galaxy, right? Most sapient species evolved as either pack hunters or solitary operators. But humans? We teamed up with wolves and turned them into dogs. We convinced cats to tolerate us. We domesticated everything from horses to elephants to honeybees. You domesticated insects? Cleet asked, looking up from his datapad. Bees, yeah, Riley said. We keep them in boxes and they make us honey. It is a whole thing. Very symbiotic. Your species, Crick said, looked at stinging insects that live in organized colonies with defensive behaviors and thought, I want their vomit. Okay, that is a really uncharitable way to describe honey, Riley protested, but technically accurate. There was a long silence in the office. Outside the window, Crix could see the Deathworld exhibit in the distance. Jamie was visible near one of the enclosures, apparently conducting another training session. The Vorgoth was doing what looked like agility drills. Fine, Crick said, pulling up the orientation forms on his terminal. Fine. You are assigned to the Deathworld exhibit as Assistant Fauna Specialist. You will report to Jamie Keller, who will either teach you proper protocols or get you both killed in a creative and extremely well-documented manner. Your first day starts tomorrow at 0700 Standard Time. Do not be late. Do not enter any enclosures without supervision. Do not attempt to pet anything without explicit permission. And for the sake of my remaining cardiovascular function, try to make it through at least one full shift before giving me another medical emergency. I promise to do my best, Riley said, which was not actually a promise to follow any of the stated instructions, and they all knew it. As Riley left the office, presumably to familiarize themselves with the facility layout and identify the fastest route to the Deathworld exhibit, Cleet settled into one of the visitor chairs. You know, Cleet said conversationally, when the humans first made contact with the Galactic Union, everyone was worried about them being aggressive or warlike. Yes, Crick said, pulling up the personnel files for the next wave of Earth transfers that were apparently scheduled for the following month. 3 more humans. 3. But it turns out, Cleet continued, the real concern should have been that they would show up and just casually redefine our entire understanding of what constitutes dangerous fauna. They are going to revolutionize xenozoology, Crix said. Every facility in the Union is going to want human specialists. This is going to become standard practice. Everything I have spent my career building, every protocol, every safety measure, every carefully maintained separation between observer and observed, it is all going to change. Progress is terrifying. Cleet agreed. I am going to need a bigger office, Crick said, and significantly more comprehensive medical coverage, and possibly a therapist, already added to the budget, Cleet said. Corporate approved it immediately after seeing last quarter's revenue numbers. From somewhere in the distance, Crix heard a sound. It took him a moment to recognize it as the Vorgoth's greeting call, the one it made when Jamie arrived for a shift. It sounded almost happy. Crix pulled up the security feed on his terminal, splitting his attention between the various cameras throughout the facility. There was Riley, exactly as predicted, already making their way toward the Deathworld exhibit with the purposeful stride of someone on a mission. There was Jamie, waving from inside the enclosure as the Vorgoth bounded over like an oversized puppy. There was the Shriekwing, perched on its climbing structure, watching the approaching human with what might have been curiosity. And there, in the background, was a crowd of visitors from a dozen different species, all watching with fascination as humanity's strange talent for befriending the unbefriendable played out in real time. Cleet, Crick said. Yes, Director? Start a new betting pool. How long until Riley has taught something new to one of the creatures? Already running, Cleet said, displaying his datapad. Current over-under is 90 minutes. I am taking action if you want in. Crix considered his options. Considered his budget. Considered his blood pressure. Put me down for 75 minutes, he said, and make a note in the log. Official director's note. Quote, humanity's capacity for interspecies bonding is both the most terrifying and most valuable asset the Galactic Union has encountered. We are extremely fortunate. They decided to join us peacefully. End quote. Noted, Cleet said. Anything else? Yes, Crix said, watching on the monitor as Riley reached the observation window and pressed their face against it with the exact same expression of delight that Jamie had worn 1 week earlier. Order more enrichment supplies, all types, and start drawing up plans for expanding the program to the other exhibits. If we are doing this, if we are really letting humans revolutionize how we handle dangerous fauna, then we are going to do it right. You are actually embracing this, Cleet observed. I am accepting the inevitable, Crix corrected. There is a difference. The humans are here. More are coming. And trying to stop them from befriending every dangerous creature in the galaxy would be like trying to stop a supernova with a particularly stern memo. So, instead, I am going to adapt, evolve, and possibly develop a substance dependency to cope. That is very mature of you, Cleet said. That is very defeated of me, Crix countered. But at least the visitor numbers are good. On the monitor, Riley had somehow already made contact with Jamie through the communication system. They were talking animatedly, gesturing at the creatures, clearly discussing enrichment strategies. The Vorgoth had noticed Riley and was watching them with interest. Crix sighed, a sound that resonated from all 3 of his respiratory chambers. I give it 30 minutes before Riley is inside the enclosure. 20 says they are already planning it, Cleet said. No bet, Crix replied. I am not a fool. Not anymore. And as he watched the 2 humans enthusiastically discuss how to better enrich the lives of creatures that could end civilizations, Crix had to admit, if only to himself, that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was better off with humans in it. Even if they were going to give him a fatal cardiac episode eventually, at least it would be well documented.